Okay, a couple of housekeeping activities. Welcome, of course, to the St. Genevieve Museum Learning Center. We can't thank you enough for supporting us. And a couple of housekeeping duties if you need the restroom. 15 feet that way, make a left, you're there. Easy peasy. We hatched a dinosaur egg. You aware of that down there in our egg incubator? You missed it? Well, the kids loved it. It was a fun time this past weekend. And kids also had a fun time guessing the dinosaur's name, which is Spike. Any idea why his name is Spike?
His name is Spikeosaurus.
Spikeosaurus? No. The reason it's named Spike, it comes from what our team unearthed at the dig site in Bollinger County. The Parasaurus missouriensis has a spiked thumb, which differentiates it from all the dinosaurs in Missouri and this side of the Mississippi. So Spike, he'll forever be known. Please silence your cell phones if you haven't already done so. Museum revenue comes from just a few sources, really. Admissions, grants, memberships, generous donations, and sponsorships. Much like tonight's program. It's sponsored by Dennis and Sherry Mueller of Mueller's Tire and Auto Service, so we certainly thank them for sponsoring us tonight. Yes. And if you're stopping by to get tires or oil change or something, be sure and thank them as well. We have a number of speaker presentations coming up, and if you're a member, how many of you are members already? Quite a few. Well, if you paid admission tonight and you would like to be a member, your paid admission from tonight can be used toward a membership. What does your membership get you? Well, you have unlimited visits to the museum, and you also get to see all of our speaker presentations for free. So admission is free to museum members. So something to think about. And you can take care of that tonight after the program. Ellie will be down at the front desk down there, and she'll sign you up. So just something to keep in mind. Coming up on October 2nd, fascinating guy, Stonehands. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He is an artist, a master crafter of instruments. He focuses on native style art and culture. He makes pipes out of stone, beautiful pipes, and teeny tiny arrowheads. I mean, what big, smaller than an eraser. And he's really quite something. Anyway, he's been doing this for over 20 years. He talks all around the Midwest, so he's going to be here on October 2nd. David Fielder, recognize the name? Well-known author. He's going to be here on October 29th, the author of The Enemy Among Us. He's going to talk about particularly the Weingarten POW camp. So that'll be fascinating, I think. That kind of coincides with our new World War II and Weingarten POW exhibit that is currently underway with exhibit builder extraordinaire Fred Darrow. Where's Fred? He's out there somewhere. He's going to. Don't turn the lights off yet, no. He's working on a nice display for that, so be on the lookout for that. And continuing with the World War II theme, we'll have Maurice Whitley on November 13th. And she'll tell us about her dad, who was a red tail. I don't know if you heard about the red tail. It's a World War II African-American fighter pilot, a member of the Tuskegee Airmen. So that'll be very interesting, I think. Bill Nager's got a presentation coming up in December. So we try and have all kinds of different topics for you. And if you have a topic in mind that you'd like us to explore, we'll try and find someone. We'll be happy to do a presentation. And of course, if you would like to sponsor a presentation as well, we would certainly appreciate that. Our tractor cruising will return on October 29th, so bring the kids out. And you know, kids like tractors almost as much as dinosaurs. Maybe not quite, but almost. So anyway, without further ado, you've all heard of the Great Loop by now, I'm sure. Well, if you haven't, try to find out all about it with tonight's presentation. Mike and Jody Uding, they had quite the adventure for an entire year. Could you live in a boat for a whole year? I don't think I could, but let's find out how they did it. Let's give them a round.
Hi everybody, welcome, thanks for coming, and a special thanks to Mueller Tire for sponsoring this event, and it sounds like there's lots of good things to see and do here, so please pay attention and do that. So I'm Jody, this is my husband Mike. I think we'll start with Mike kind of explaining the route we took and how we navigated, and a special app called Nevo, how we all the loopers, all 300 boats that are on that t-shirt we're passing around, how we all communicated with one another, and we could tell where the other boat was at all times and things like that. So, you know, if your friends were at a special marina, then you could go to the special marina and meet them. So, Mike, you can give them the route, and then we'll do the slideshow.
Okay, I'll give you a quick route of what we did. We started in Alton, Illinois, and we went down to Mississippi till we hit Cairo, and then we crossed over the Ohio into the Tennessee River. And from the Tennessee River, we went through Kentucky Lake, and you go through Kentucky Lake, and you come out in Pickwick Lake. And once you get in the Pickwick Lake, you take what's called the Tom Bigby Waterway, which was a man-made canal. It was only finished in 1984, and we took the Tom Bigby, kind of joins the Mobile River, and you come out in Mobile Bay. And from Mobile Bay, we take the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway all the way through the panhandle of Florida and Alabama, and then we got as far as Carabel, Florida. And once you get to Carabel, there's no intercoastal between Carabel and down here, so you have to make a crossing and cross the Gulf. And we started out in Carabel, and then got to about here, and that's where Jody got sick and we turned around. And then we wound up waiting 11 days for weather to calm down, so we could finally make the crossing from Carabel to Steinhatchee, Florida. And then we followed the Gulf Intercoastal Florida. We followed that all the way down along the western coast of Florida. And some people cut across Okeechobee, but we didn't. We went and continued all the way down, and we spent Christmas in Key West, Florida. And then towards the early part of spring, we started up the east coast of Florida. And we spent a month going up the east coast of Florida to Georgia, the Carolinas, Virginia, all the way up to Chesapeake Bay, which is in Norfolk, Virginia, and that's the end of the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway. So from there we zigzagged back and forth across to Chesapeake Bay, and we took a side trip up to Potomac and parked our boat right next to the Capitol in DC, and we spent a couple of days there, and then came back down. And then we finished up, and we went through Chesapeake Bay, then we go down Delaware Bay, and
That was terrible.
it was a little rough. And then we went, from there you go down to Cape May, and then you have to go back out in the Atlantic for a while, because the intercoastal waterway in New Jersey is fairly shallow. So we went and did another crossing out through the outside of New Jersey, and then we went all the way up, and then we took a left turn into the Hudson River and went right past the Statue of Liberty. Then we went from up there, then we went to Waterford, New York. And in Waterford, the canal splits. You can either take the Erie Canal, which is what we were planning on doing, but when we got there, the day we got there, they announced that there was a bridge down and we wouldn't be able to go that way for about 3 weeks. So then we decided, well, we'll go a different way. And we went what was called an alternate route. We went from way up to, we went through Lake Champlain and came out north on the St. Lawrence River, north of Montreal. And then we went down to Montreal, went through Montreal. We spent a couple of nice days in Montreal. Then we took the Ottawa River over to Ottawa, which is the Canada, capital of Canada, which is really nice. They had the changing in the guard and everything else. It was really a nice place. And from Ottawa, you take what's called the Rideau Canal, which is one of the highlights of my trip because it was built in the 1830s, and there's 49 locks, and they're all operated by hand.
Whose hand?
And all the bridges are operated by hand cranked. And it's really neat to go through. It's a historic waterway, and they like to keep it that way. And so we did that, and that came out in Kingston, Ontario. And from Kingston, Ontario, we went and did what's called the Trent Severn Waterway. And the Trent Severn Waterway was another canal where it had three things that I was really looking forward to, which was a Peterbilt. It was in Peterborough, they have what's called a lift lock, where you drive your boat into, essentially it looks like a big bathtub. It's about 3 times as big as this room, and it lifts you up like an elevator, and then you drive out the other side. And that was amazing to me. I mean, we had about 6 or 7 boats sitting in the big like bathtub, and went up like an elevator and dropped us out the other side. And the other lock that I really liked, we had 2 locks like that. There was 2 of them. There are only 2 in the world. And then the other one was what they called a big chute, which is where the canal they hit.
I mispronounced that. I was calling it something else.
Anyway, it's a big chute, and when they were building the canal, they came to, in Canada, granite, they came to a huge mound of rock. There was no way to go through it. So they built a railroad that goes over the top. It lifts you about 58 foot, and you drive your boat onto a flat, like barge-like thing, and it's on the railroad tracks, and it takes you, lifts you out of the water, and takes you and dumps you on the other side. We'll show you a picture. And it is really a neat thing to go through. And so that was going through the Trent. And the Trent drops you out in what's called Georgian Bay, which is the northern part of Lake Huron. And Georgian Bay is just beautiful. It is wilderness. I mean, there is nothing there. And we are days without cell and all this, and it was just beautiful. And then you go through another little passage. You can get what's called the Northern Channel, and that drops you out into Lake Huron, and then from there you cross over to the northern part of Lake Michigan, and then you go through Mackinac, and then we went through all along the east coast of Lake Michigan. We went to every little town and spent days there, and then we got to Chicago. And Chicago, you can get on the Illinois River runs right through Chicago, and so the Illinois River, we got on the Illinois River, and that brings you back to Alton, Illinois, right where we started. It was a trip that was 7,091 nautical miles, which is 8,179 statute miles, and we never did over 10 miles an hour. We traveled for 159 days, and that was 159 359 days. And the other times we were tourists in towns and doing all kinds of other stuff. But that was it. That's the trip. And
When we were nav apps and.
okay, and then the navigation was fairly easy. They have nowadays chart plotters and everything. I did everything off my iPad, the tablets. I mean, I can program in my route and I can see maps. All the maps are there. I mean, you don't have to go through buying a whole bunch of charts. It's all on the app, and all you gotta do is figure out where you're going, and then follow a line. And it was fairly easy. And there is like she wants to talk, Nebo, there's an app called Nebo, which is everybody belongs to, usually everybody that does this trip belongs to what's called the America's Great Blue Cruisers Association. And they have all their members usually get in on this one app. And this app keeps track of all of us. I mean, so if we have friends that we met here and we know, we can see where they're at every day and everybody can see where we're at. I mean, it's amazing, but yeah, you're never alone. A little bit, we traveled with other couples off and on the whole time. I mean, there was very few times where we weren't traveling with somebody. And
We went through a lock and Mike was leading and the lockmaster said, "You leading all these people?" And he said, "Tried like hell, I can't outrun them." So should we start the slide?
yeah, I guess that's it.
Okay, I guess we'll start the slides.
Okay.
Otherwise we're running out of time. So there's our boat, no agenda. You can move on. This was how we got into all this. That was our sailboat. We owned that for about 5 years down at Green Turtle Bay, Kentucky Lake. And it was called Why Not? But every October, all the looper boats would come in and be here for a week or two at a time. And so we learned about the loop, and they were just having too much fun. So that's kind of how we got into
Louder,
it.
please.
Yeah, and this is the route Mike just kind of went over. And we bought this boat in Florida. I'll let Mike talk a little bit about bringing it back.
Yeah, we did a stupid thing. We bought a boat in Florida. And we bought it right before hurricane season.
So we had to move it.
And the insurance said we had to get this boat out of Florida and back up at least to Annapolis, Alabama before hurricane season. So I jumped on this boat, we bought it, and I had airline tickets to go home. We weren't planning on buying the boat. We bought it, and I jumped on the boat. The guy who owned the boat before us went with me for 3 days, and we went across Okeechobee, and he dropped me off in Fort Myers. And that was it. I was on my own from there. And so, well, then my brother came down and met me in Fort Myers and went with me all the way up to Mobile, Alabama. Then in Mobile, Alabama, my wife met me, and she stayed on the boat for about a week, and we went to Annapolis. And then at Annapolis, Lynn and Leon came down, and Leon stayed on the boat with me from Annapolis all the way up to Green Turtle Bay in Kentucky. And then my brother came back, and we brought the boat from Green Turtle Bay to Alton, Illinois. That was a trip of 1,700 miles, and it And I didn't know what I was doing. It was a good trip, but it taught me a lot about the boat. So whenever I got back, I thought, well, I can do the loop. I already did 1/4 of it. So, and we weren't planning on just jumping on the boat and doing the loop. We were planning on waiting a year, but things didn't work out, and we just basically just jumped on the boat and went to Reed and came back and did the whole thing again. So I did that part of the loop twice.
And this is the interior. We can just kind of go through it so you know our living quarters, the little galley. Up on top our fly bridge. This is the back area, stern. Stairs. This was a selling point. Most of these boats have a ladder that you go up and down, and I like the steps. And there's our big queen mattress, bathroom, and it had a full shower as well. So it was like living in an RV, really. And that's Mike doing maintenance. I'll let him tell you about all the things he has to do.
Yeah, so every morning you gotta check the oil and all that kind of stuff. You gotta make sure nothing's leaking down there and stuff. And basically, whenever we bought the boat, she bought this great big area rug. And she put it down over the thing, and her friends lifted the couch, put this big rug down, and I walked on the boat and said, that's gotta go, I gotta get in this. I gotta get in this hatch every day a couple of times. I'm not gonna move your damn rug.
And that was our first fight.
But anyway, I did. The engine is a 300 horsepower Caterpillar engine, and I had to change oil 4 times on the loop, and it burned about 2.5 gallons of diesel an hour. Wow! Which is not much, but we had 300-gallon fuel tanks, so we had a lot of range. But then every time you had to fill up, it was like $1,000. So, yeah. But we didn't have much trouble with the engine. The engine ran just beautifully for the whole 1,000 hours.
Yeah. All right, so how do you get ready for a trip like that? Well, we have 2 horses and a dog. My horses went to Hope Therapeutic Horsemanship. This is some young lady trying to see if my horse is gentle. And Sophie was adopted immediately by this little gal, so I think they were well cared for while we were gone. We drove Hank all the way out to Walla Walla, Washington, 108-pound lab, and me and Mike in a single cab pickup. It was really a lot of fun. It was a good trip too. All right. So this was Paul and Jackie meeting us in Mobile, and Glenn and Leon meeting us in Green Turtle Bay. And that was Mike and Paul going in front of the Gateway Arch. Our son Scott was on the road. Yeah, Scott took a picture for us. And this was launch day, October 3rd. Here we go. We did not wear those hats ever again. Steph and Greg flew over the gyro, and we got some good aerial pictures. So that was coming down in front of Little Rock Landing. And this was leaving Alton, past the arch again, Little Rock Landing. And then that's the Kaskaskia Wall. So unfortunately, there is no place in St. Genevieve for a boat to dock right now. It would be a neat revenue thing for our town, because the year we did it, 300 other boats did it, and all 300 of them went to Kimswick and Alton. But in any event, we met folks in this lineup, as you can imagine. And my brother Tom went with us. He left Alton with us and stayed with us all the way to Kentucky Lake. And there he is, Okie. And thank God he was along. He goes, I need to go because you won't know what to do. Well, October 1st was my last day of work, and October 3rd we left. So I read a few things in between. But anyway, so the first lock was smooth. The second lock, Okie said, now you do this lock, you gotta lasso this. They're called ballards, but I call them bastards. You gotta lasso this thing. And the second time when it was my turn, it was like broken and it was like 10 foot in the air, and Okie had to climb up and get it. We made it. There's going past Cape Girardeau, the Cape Bridge, just some things you guys might recognize. Beautiful bluffs. That's down in Kentucky Lake. So it took us 4 days to get from Alton to Kentucky Lake to Green Turtle Bay, and Okie's friends came and picked him up. Actually, Scotty flew down and got him. We went to the America's Great Loop Cruisers Association rendezvous or conference. It was in Paris, Tennessee, and so this was a one-day boat ride from Green Turtle Bay. And there were about 400 folks at this convention. It was at the Paris Landing Lodge, and they had a big marina, so we all stayed on the boats. And it lasted 4 or 5 days. It was a lot of fun. Met a lot of folks. Met folks that we would meet again later. And we had a good time. And of course, this gal up in the corner was real fashionable. She had on the same shirt I did. And Lynn and Leon actually visited us in Paris, Tennessee. There we are, not in Paris, France. We did take a side trip. This was a cool one. It took us 6 days by boat to get down the Tennessee River to Chattanooga, and that was a lot of fun. Points of interest. There was Rock City, where all of these places so far have been places to take your kids. It's just our go. It's fun. Rock City, you can see 7 states. There's lots of walking, incline railroad, lots of Civil War, Point Park, and different areas where the Civil War battles took place. The Union soldiers won there because the big fog came in and they were able to get the other guys. And our friend Mary Lou joined us down there, so that was fun. And these are other loopers we had met along the way. Actually, that's Susan with the same shirt on she had in the other picture. And now I'm going to let Mike talk about this.
Okay, we went through a lot of locks. In all, we probably went through 197 locks. I mean, there were days when we would go through 10 and 11 locks in a day. I mean, they were spaced really close together. And most of them were in Canada, and like I said, most of them were in historic waterways where they were hand operated. It was really neat. And it was in the United States, the Corps of Engineers takes care of the locks. They're mostly for commercial and government use. They let recreational people use it for free, but they're very strict. You don't get off your boat. You have to be very rigid about the rules on the locks. Where you get into Canada, and the locks are more like a party. It's like
People get on your boat.
it's run by Parks Canada. So we had to pay for, I think a pass for the whole season was like $700 for a pass to use the locks. But we went through a lot of locks for $700. And all of them you can stop, and they have like places where you can stop and tie up, and you can spend the night there. So it was free. So it wasn't free, it was $700, but you didn't have to shell out a little money every night. So in Canada, the locks were like a party. I mean, they were run by the Parks Department. All around the locks were kept like a park setting. I mean, they were all really nicely manicured and everything was fine. College kids ran the things because they had to hand crank everything. And old people ain't gonna do it. I mean, they had to hand crank everything. But it was neat because if you jumped off the boat and they said, "Hey, can we crank this open for, can we do it?" They said, "Sure, go ahead." And they would stand there and watch you crank the rock open, and it was fun. And Canada was a really fun place to go through the locks. 197. Do what?
Well, the lock master would give us a time on this Tennessee Tom Bigby. So you have your loopers there at 6:45 or whatever. So hence the fog in the morning. We would leave sometime in the dark to get to the lock and go in groups like this. So naturally, this little waterway, you meet all these people and they become your new family for a while. Okay. Yeah, we're all the way down to Mobile, Alabama now. And the middle picture, Bruce, do you know that?
I do recognize it.
Yeah, that's Mississippi Lime Plant in Mobile, Alabama. So, yeah. Anyway, that's Mobile's waterfront, and this was the kind of traffic we were, I was honking at, trying to get around. Yeah, go ahead. This was on the Tennessee Tom Bigby. This was the 13-mile bridge. On our way, bringing the boat back to Missouri when we first bought it, this was the first obstruction Mike and I came to. It was down. And then we're on the radio, we're panicking. They said it was going to take 13 days or something to get it back up. And so I called the railway police. And they said, "Oh, there's a crew heading out there to see if they can fix it. It got struck by lightning." So I said, "Just hang out here, Mike." So we hung out, and this crew comes on this white pickup, like a railroad pickup, and somehow they raised it, and I said, "Go, go, 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 go." And we didn't ask permission, we just went under the ditch. And it came back down, and it didn't raise again for 13 days. Yeah. So anyway, but we had to go back under it to get down to Mobile Bay. And then this is Fairhope, Alabama. Great place if you ever want to take your family or go on a little honeymoon trip. It's just neat. Right on the Mobile Bay, and very artsy town. We got there for the Friday night art walk, and unlike St. John, they have a full gospel choir singing, walking around town. That was kind of neat. And I'll let Mike tell you about those rock houses.
Okay, so I went walking around in the evening and came across these houses that are not too far from the art gallery, and they're called the storybook houses. And there's one family that built 5 or 6 houses that look like they come out from a storybook. And I don't know if you can see it, but on the top of the roof there's dragons, and the houses have moats and everything else. And it's just a beautiful little neighborhood. And I sat on their porch and talked to them all evening about their houses and their stonework and stuff. And it was fun. It was a nice place.
So moving on, this is the Gulf Shores, Alabama, actually. That's Lulu's, which is a restaurant and kind of resorty marina owned by Jimmy Buffett's sister. And she wasn't there though. That's our boat at Lulu's. And beautiful sunsets. Jimmy Buffett's sister got her start with, she was a chef, and Harrison Ford needed a cook on a boat while he was filming Mosquito Coast, and Jimmy Buffett got her the job. That's how she got her start. And coming up, we did a lot of anchoring in this area, and that's our dinghy. We were anchored and took it to this little deserted island. It was all military bases, so it was like all an air show at night. We made it down to, Carl and Lisa. They were following us on Nebo. Anyway, they're like, "Hey, you're close." So anyway, we went and saw them near Destin, and that's Carl and Lisa's Klein from St. Genevieve. That's the view from their deck. And they spent the day with us on the boat. They traveled from Destin to Panama City with us. This was in Panama City, and Hurricane Ian had already wreaked its havoc about 3 weeks earlier, and now Hurricane Nicole was coming, so we were batting down the hatches there. We met this couple, Ann and Mitch, and they stayed with us for several weeks. we were stuck there for about 3 days because the winds were fierce and it was a hurricane. So we took public transportation and went into Panama Beach and did all the resort things and met all kinds of homeless people on the bus. And they were hysterical. They were telling us where to go. And anyway, we got armbands to go to this car show. And when we were getting on the bus again, this one guy that we had told us where to go, he said, "Are you going to use those armbands again?" No, he knew how to take it off me. He got to go too. And there's a big alligator. I was going to paddleboard, and I said, "Maybe you shouldn't." So I guess he still likes me. Okay. Oh gosh, this was in Carabel. Well, I'll let Mike tell you since he already said I got sick. This is Carabel.
Okay, Carabel is where we got stuck waiting for the weather. Where she got sick, we tried to go. But anyway, while we were waiting, we were with Mitch and Ann, and we just rented a car and went and did a whole bunch of tourist things for those 11 days. So we just drove around. And we actually, Mitch and Ann were just finishing their loop. They were only about 2 days away from being home. So we went and rented a car and went to their house, and then they took us all over that part of Florida and down to we went to Tarpon Springs and
St. Pete, Tarpon, Tampa, at the Y Bar area where all of the Cuban restaurants and all that stuff is. And we had a lot of fun. But the reason I got sick is we were crossing in 6-foot waves, and we were with 5 other boats, and 4 of them were turning back, and after I threw up in the waste can, I said, let's go back. So anyway, this was at the Columbia restaurant in Tampa, and that's the view from St. Pete's Riverwalk, and that was on the Tampa trolley. So we did quite a bit of touring around with them, and also some kayaking with dolphins and manatees, and it was a lot of fun. Okay.
yeah, and we saw thousands of dolphins.
Yeah, thousands. Anyway, this was the day we could leave Carabel finally. Mike took us out to Alligator Point, and we anchored 2 hours away from Carabel so that in the morning we would have more daylight because we needed, you only go 8 miles an hour. So anyway, we anchored. We think we got this place to ourselves, and then pulls in this boat and drops anchor. So more of that story to come. These folks, we didn't talk to them that night, but when we got to Steinhatchee, we went to one of the only bar and restaurants there, of course, and there they sat, and they were drinking Busch Light, and I said, "Well, you Hoosiers, you must be from Missouri." Jefferson County. Anyway, so they hung with us all the way to Key West, and they were quite fun. Just one of the many sunsets. Go ahead. This is Clearwater, just kind of a quick view. And that's some of the bridges on the intercoastal. You have to have them open the bridges for you. Some of them went up, some of them swung around. It was just, you never knew. We thought our boat was 17 foot and some inches, but we learned later on it was only 16 foot and something. But anyway, this is my cousin, Patrick and Greg, down in Sarasota. They picked us up and took us on a great tour of Sarasota, and we had a great time. And if anyone knows anything about art, that's Colony Art right there, the big painting in their entryways. Quite neat. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. We're all the way down to the most southern tip of Florida, Sable Point, Point Sable. And Mike made friends with that duck. And he stayed on our boat overnight and left us lots of presents. But anyway, so the group that we had met from Jefferson County were waiting for a guy on a boat named Trust Me to come to Sable Point, and then he was going to take them across to Key West, because you're going to be out in the middle of the ocean for about 80 miles by yourself. And I said, okay, we're going with you. And so Trust Me shows up. And he was a guy that knew all of our friends in Green Turtle Bay, so he was from Green Turtle Bay, so it was like a small world. But anyway, he left at 5 o'clock in the damn morning, it was dark, and I'm like, I guess I trust you. So I was on the front with a flashlight, looking for crab pots, and that's us on our way to Key West, so you can move on. Here we are, we had some visitors in Key West. Mary Lou and Sister Tony came to see us. Tom and Roxanne came to see us, and they're pictured in front of Harpoon Harry's, which Tom's best buddy Rodney Melfeld recommended we go eat there, and we sure did. And Stan and Vicky came to see us, and that was a lot of fun. And our son Scott and Ian also came. So we were there for a month, and we had some company, so it was fun. I met Santa Claus, he was on vacation. Our resort had 2 heated swimming pools and 5 restaurants, our marina, and we could access that by staying there. So, and they had a trolley that would take us to the downtown area, so it was really nice. That's Mike. That's how we got groceries on our folding bikes and a backpack. So you had to, I had to really be creative how I got beer back to the boat. And then with Tom and Rox, we rented mopeds one night or one day and went out. It was a lot of fun. Points of interest, I guess you've all been to Key West. I mean, it's Hemingway's house and little White House and lots of beaches and lots of bars and restaurants. It was fun. And this was moving up the coast a little bit after we left Key West, Bahi Honda Park. This was one of my favorite places. We spent 2 nights here. It was like having a private beach. You have anything to say? It was neat. I did take my paddleboard out, and 2 sharks swam under me, and then I put it back away. Yeah.
Okay, and then from here we went to the next ones where we went to Marathon Key and spent 2 weeks in Marathon, and they have a nice little turtle hospital where they do all this rehab of turtles that get hit by boats or have some kind of problems. They have a little rescue thing for turtles. And we went out fishing one day, and what we found was this boat floating out there, and it is a Cuban or Haitian refugee boat. They had, it looked like, went to shore and pushed the boat out, and the boat was just floating out in the middle of nowhere. So they had to call the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard come and take it away. But that was down in Marathon, and we were going to go over to, Fort Ticonderoga down in Key West. We were going to go and take a trip over there, but they had so many immigrants coming in and landing at the shore that they closed down the fort for the 3 days where we were going to go over, so we didn't get to do that. So then we left Marathon, and then we went up to...
That's still Marathon.
That's still Marathon. Okay, that was still Marathon. Yeah, we went to an EAA museum in Marathon and stuff like that. And we had Docktails, which is everybody doing the loop does. Pretty much you're on your own during the day, but then we pull into a place in the evening, they have Docktails. Everybody jumps off their boat, brings their chairs, and they sit around and drink and have Docktails. And so that happens pretty much every night.
Yeah, the restaurant below was called Perfect Pig, and it was very good. We enjoyed breakfast there. We came all the way up the Intercoastal. That's Joe and Mary Shilley from St. Genevieve. They were following us on Vivo, and I knew Mary from before we left, and so they took us out to lunch and to the Cardinals Stadium and did a few things. So it was just you know, a little touch at home. And then our next place we stopped was in Stewart, and the couple over here are Jim and Pat Rossman, who we bought the boat from. He was following us on Nebo, and he caught our lines when we landed, and he did a full inspection, made sure we hadn't dirtied it up or anything. They took us out to eat. It was a lot of fun. And we were working our way to Daytona Beach because the twins were coming. Our son Zachary and his wife Angela had twins while we were doing the loop, so we had to get somewhere where we could be safe leaving the boat for a while. And we flew out from there and were with the kids for about 3 weeks. But Daytona Beach is a lot of fun, and you can actually drive your car up and down the beach. It's just packed hard. It was a lot of fun. We did a lot of bike riding, and the Daytona 500 was going on while we were there. We rented a car before we left for seeing the kids, and went to, in the Orlando area, there's a Blue Spring. Those big rocks are manatees. There were 800 manatees in there resting. And then we, of course, we did a lot of things, but we did the Kennedy Space Station too while we were there. It was really neat. And Scotty met us, our son Scott, met us when we got back to Daytona, and we drove the boat that day to St. Augustine, where we stayed for about a week. And this picture is Mike putting a new windlass motor on the boat. He said if he was home, he could have fixed it. We had to spend $3,000 on this part. But anyway, he got that working. That would let the anchor come back up mechanically instead of lifting it. And St. Augustine, wonderful place. If you've never been, I would recommend it. Just so much history and so much fun. And we had visitors. The Udings in the top picture came to visit us. That was awesome. Down in this lower picture is JT Thousand. He's my brother Reno, who passed away. That was his godson, and he's a dentist in St. Augustine. So he came over and had dinner with us. And then the Oberly crew came, John and Nancy and Cindy. So we had a lot of fun, a lot of happenings. Then the next week, we were in, where were we, Mike? Ferdinand Beach. There you go. It kind of all runs together. So Lynn and Leon were in that area visiting Leon's grandson, and so they spent a few days with us. These are all looper couples. This couple with the dog, Brian and Kathleen, they're from Washington State, and you know, our boat says St. Genevieve on it, and Brian says, "Do you know Tom Mueller? He's like my best friend." So it's like Bob Mueller's brother, Tom, Kenny, yeah. So it's a small world. And those are our headsets. Mike's helping me get ready here. That's how we communicate when he's driving or putting the anchor down, or we're trying to dock so that we can talk to one another. So they're called marriage savers. Next stop up the road, well, you know, sometimes it takes more than one day to get to these places, but this was Jekyll Island. My horse girls came to see me, so it was so much fun. Jan and Vicki and Lynn and Barb. So we did all the Jekyll Island things. We rode bikes, we rented horses and rode down Driftwood Beach. We ate, drank, and were merry. That's the Grand Hotel, and I asked this gal, would you take our picture? So she's snapping the picture, and she says, "Oh, where are you ladies from?" And I said, "St. Genevieve." "Oh, do you know Holly Hull's camp?" It's like, yes. So she was Holly's friend, so it was neat. So we could move on. Oh, Savannah. Savannah was awesome. This couple, they joined us in, where did we meet? St. Augustine. Yeah, and they stayed with us almost all the way through Canada. So we became like, you know, brothers and sisters, and they were so much fun, Chris and Laura. And Savannah is a wonderful place if you've never been. There's so many neat things. There's 22 city squares, all of these live oaks with moss, and just really neat. And we watched the movie in the Garden of Good and Evil before we went, and went to the Mercer House where it was filmed, and so you felt like you were really Savannah cool. And we also saw the Savannah Bananas play baseball, which was a lot of fun. This is Charlottesville, or no, what is this? Charleston. Charleston. Look at that. That was our friends.
Our boat was there.
Yeah, see that little bitty boat and this big ass boat? I mean, and to dock it, I mean, it was just like killing you. But anyway, we put every little floater we had out. Lots of military history, lots of Civil War history, and Revolutionary War history. It was just really neat. And we took a ferry over to Fort Sumter, where the first shots of the Civil War were actually fired. Lots of neat things. It's just hard to describe. It's like a living museum. Yeah, here, I'll let you talk a little bit. Well, this was in the Carolinas, South Carolina. This was actually Beaufort. Lots of Mike took a chance on a boat.
Did he win?
No, thank God he didn't win it. Anyway, yeah. Well, we went over to Shackleford Island on the Outer Banks, and it's all these wild horses live there. And they have to paw down about 2 foot, and some groundwater seeps up. And they don't feed them or anything; they just kind of observe them. I know it's kind of sad, but we hiked. I really wanted to go over there, and then after I did, I was like, why did I do this? We hiked about 8 miles. In sand, looking for a boat with 1 bottle of water. I was ready to paw down there myself. But this house up here, that was in Beaufort. That's where Blackbeard's boat wrecked around that area. And that's where he would take his mistresses. And if they didn't do what he wanted, he took them out back and hung them. I know. Pretty bad, isn't it? Anyway, what's that little plant called?
Venus flytraps.
Oh yeah, Venus flytraps, the only place where they grow. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the picture here where it looks like a real nail. This is in the Carolinas. Right after this is where you get to Chesapeake Bay. This is what they call a dismal swamp, and it is so neat. It was hardly room for 2 boats to pass. I mean, you had to find a place to get over the side. It was so narrow and so shallow that you're always worried about hitting something, but it was so pretty, and it was so nice. It's such a nice place to go. And then we went to Kitty Hawk and everything else.
Yeah, well, the Dismal Swamp was, before George Washington was our president, he was kind of a land baron guy. And he had other investors and their slaves dig this by hand. Can you imagine this canal? How many miles long was it, Mike?
It's only about 10 miles long.
Yeah, 10. But anyway, it came out in Portsmouth, or Norfolk, Virginia. They were just across the river from each other. When we got there, there were gale force winds and small craft advisory for like 5 days. So we were stuck, and we rented a car and did a lot of things. We did at the Outer Banks, Kitty Hawk, the Roanoke Island where the first settlers came, all this stuff. You can keep going. Williamsburg. Yeah, Williamsburg was awesome. If you haven't been, you need to go. But I tell you, St. Genevieve we have buildings as old, and we have all this history here. It's amazing. Yorktown, this was a lot of fun. They had a dock where we could dock. This is where the Revolutionary War Museum was. And one thing that I kept being fascinated by was the tent where George Washington slept. You know, it's like, oh my God, that's it. But it's a big military area, and those are our friends. That night, we were sitting out, and this military thing went by. What was that?
Hovercraft.
A hovercraft went by and knocked us all out of our chairs. And we only had like one drink, even though we looked like we had more. But we were laughing our butts off and waiting for it to come back again. But anyway, you can another sunset. Now this was my favorite part of the trip. We went down the Potomac. It took us 2 days or 3 to get down there. 3 days down the Potomac. We anchored 2 nights, and then we went to the Capitol Yacht Club. And this boat in the upper corner, which was next to us, I was sitting on top looking out, and I told Mike, you know, Senator Joe Manchin's got a boat somewhere in Washington. And I about dropped my fork, and that's his boat, almost heaven. And I thought, oh my God, how are we gonna meet him? How are we gonna meet him? And of course, Mike's got this airplane hat on, and we're walking down the dock, and Joe Manchin's coming the other way, and he stops Mike and starts talking about airplanes. So anyway, very nice gentleman. He asked us if we had a Capitol tour, which was sold out like a month in advance already. And I said, oh, I tried. And he goes, well, you got one now. So we met his personal assistant in the morning at the office, and she took us, they go down an elevator to a secret underground train, and it takes you over to the Capitol. We have to do all that. And we did all the Smithsonian things, and a Segway tour, and saw all the sights. And this grill here, the Ebbett Grill, if you ever get a chance to go to Washington, D.C., that's where Teddy Roosevelt used to eat lunch. And when he passed away, he donated all of his, or some of his animals that he shot, the busts, or whatever you call it, trophies, and they're hanging all over the place. So it was neat. Oh yeah, that's when we got stopped by the police.
Yeah, we got pulled over one time by the Coast Guard, and they did an inspection, and everything was fine. There was no problem. But the thing was that we were happened to be in Oriental, North Carolina, and it was a training base for all the Coast Guard people. So the young Coast Guard guys would pull over just about any boat that would come through. So they pulled us over, and they came on the boat, and it was not bad. I mean, it was fine. Everything was fine. But it was a good time. Jody offered him all kinds of
Yahoo cookies, whatever they wanted. Don't really know, that's all for me. Yeah. Anyway, this was St. Michael's in Chesapeake. We love that. All the little towns in Chesapeake are just, you just can't go wrong. Just drive around. Little cannons everywhere, little bars and restaurants, all kinds of boat shops and boat museums and boat builders. It was just fun. This is Annapolis. Annapolis, if you've never been, wonderful place to go. We toured the Naval Academy. There was a sailboat show going on there. We had visitors. Stan and Vicki came to see us and spent some time with us in Chesapeake, so that was awesome. Did all kinds of things. And further up the road, we're in New York City. Zach and Nora Jo came to see us. You can see them in the little, where they got to sleep. this was a company, you know, deflector, and that's where you had to sleep. So that's us going in front of the Statue of Liberty. And New York City, we did all sorts of things in New York City, all the touristy things. We were there for several days. One thing, when you go to a marina, you pay by the foot for your boat. So coming down the Mississippi, you know, 50 cents a foot, and like, this was $7.80 a foot here in New York City. That's a downtown hotel, so it was neat. Okay, I'm gonna let Mike talk about this. This is, we had to change planes.
This is going into Canada. This was where we started going through the Canada locks, which is part of my favorite thing. But this was in Waterford. This is going up the Champlain Canal, up to Lake Champlain. And then Lake Champlain is supposed to have like a Loch Ness monster like little thing in it and stuff like that. But We never saw it. We were in Canada and never saw a bear, never saw a moose, never saw much wildlife at all in Canada. I mean, because where we were going was mostly rocks and stuff, and there was no sitting around there. We saw lots of swans and loons and millions of Canadian geese. Yeah, so this was going through parts of Canada. So
Yeah, and there's a town called St. Genevieve that we went through. Oh, this was in Montreal. Yeah, the worst part of Montreal was going up the St. Lawrence River to get there, because the current was against us, so at full throttle, we were going 2 miles an hour. Isn't that all right?
yes, more than that. 4 or 5 miles.
Oh, 4 miles an hour. But anyway, we finally got there. It was great fun. Cirque du Soleil was going on. Everyone speaks French. Dr. Long sent me a selfie of herself in Montreal and said, see if you can find where I was. So I sent her back the selfie after I found her. But we had a lot of fun up there. And
This is Montebello.
yeah, Montebello, further down, after spending a couple days at anchor or without, electricity and things like that, this wonderful lodge appears. It's
the biggest log cabin in Canada or the United States. It is huge, and it is the big building in the middle is like where we went in an indoor swimming pool. And we spent 2 days there. It was a nice place. It was worth spending some time there. But anyway, that was right before we got to. That was right before we got to Ottawa. And going into Ottawa, this is the beginning of the Renault Canal, and this is locks. There was 8 locks in a row.
It was a flight. I said we were going to have a flight. I was all excited. It's lots.
But this is locks that bring you up, and you go from the back of one lock opens up into the front of the other lock, and you just go up these stair steps of locks. And this is in right downtown Ottawa. And when we did this picture we took was in the evening after the locks were closed. But in the daytime when we went through there, it is like everybody brings their lawn chairs and sits along here and watches the boats go through the locks. Because you never know when something's going to go wrong. And they're going to have a show. But it was, and these old locks are turned by hand. There was a little, you should have got a better picture, but there's a little crank with a chain with a big log that pulls the door open. I mean, these were built in 1839, and they're still working, and it is amazing.
Yeah, at the very first lock, this girl was sitting on a beach towel, and I was trying to catch this, whatever you're supposed to catch, and she walks over to help me and said, "Are you going to stay with me?" And she came all 8 with me. So that was nice. Over here, those Canadian cookies, the maple leaf cookies, they call them Obama cookies now, because when President Obama was there in Ottawa, he made his motorcade stop because he forgot to buy his girls a present, and they took him to this bakery and got these cookies. So now they sell Obama cookies. It was just neat, lots of history. It's their capital city, so we took bus tours and did all sorts of things and walked around. Oh, there's Laura and Katja, our friends from that we hung out with for months, and they're turning the crank on one of the locks. And we had to make a reservation at one lock, and there was our welcome sign. And oh, I thought this was cool. Bad storm, and look where that rainbow is. Yeah, that was fun. So lots of little towns, it was fun. Oh, here you go.
And these were the lift locks I was talking about. And yeah, you drive in this thing and it lifts you up and you go out the other side. Our boat was inside that bathtub up there. And the other one was the railroad chute lock where you go over the hump on a railroad car. And this is the front of our boat coming out of the water and going down, and they drop you off in the other side over there.
And we'll talk about the strap. That yellow strap was supposed to keep from damaging our boat.
Did it work?
I hope, yeah. Who knows? Plunk, yeah.
The strap didn't hold the boat up, it just kept it from falling over.
Yeah, it was wild. So we were out in the wilderness, like Mike said. We went to Henry's restaurant, which was only available by seaplane or boat, and on one of these little rock islands. That was kind of neat. But you really had to watch your navigation and watch your line, because if you got 1 or 2 foot off course, you were going to hit a rock. A lot of them were underwater. And look at that. I mean, okay, so this couple over in the corner, we met at Paris, Tennessee, and we didn't see him again until we just accidentally anchored next to him. I'm like, oh my God. So we hung out with Bill and Margie for quite some time. They had a drone and took some pictures. So that's Georgian Bay. It's just breathtaking. And we did a lot of hiking and just goofed off. Yeah. There we are. This is, tell them about the cabin there.
Okay, the cabin there is going into an acreage, but that was owned by the Evinrude company, Evinrude family. They have this little cabin, but they come up to this cabin, they still come to this cabin, but they come to this cabin in a 100-foot boat, and they take extension cords from the boat and plug into the cabin and power the cabin. And this is back in a place called a pool, and it's just a beautiful anchorage. There's absolutely nothing back there. I mean, it's just...
It was fun. But, you know, in the evenings, everybody gets in their dinghies and they come over and visit you and all that stuff. And that was, well, that's okay. That was a lake that we hiked to. It was like a 3-mile hike up to this glacier lake. It was just gorgeous. And more of Canada. Yeah. And well, we skipped.
This is Mackinac.
Yeah, we skipped getting back into the U.S. Going through immigration was done on an app, and they just FaceTimed us. And it was really rough that day, and the lady was like, "Could you hold still?" And I'm like, "No." But anyway, they let us back in. This is Mackinac Island. Jan and Al came to visit us, so that was neat. We did all the things you do, the Grand Hotel, and took a carriage ride, and took a bike ride. And that's the governor's mansion on Mackinac. And this is going down Lake Michigan. A lot of the little towns have a little inlet where you go under a bridge to get in. And if you notice this little golf cart down at the bottom here, I say Genevieve needs these and needs to get tours. I mean, we hopped on these things all over the place, and people will take you around, give you a little tour, you know. And I took a picture of all these crazy fools on this sailboat. They were docked next to us because this guy on the boat goes, "St. Genevieve, do you know Lisa Zarinelli?" Gina Zarinelli, like I do. And he didn't believe me. So he called Gina and had to verify that we knew each other. But anyway, it was fun. And this was another architect that had, you know, a unique style with stonework. So Mike being a stonemason, we took a tour of all those little houses. It was cool. There was about 30 of them in the town. And look at that, who came to see us? Yeah, the Grasses, they were on their own vacation in Traverse City and knew we were going to be around at the same time. So they graciously picked us up, and we got to see a lot of the peninsula, things we wouldn't have seen by bicycle. And that's bare dunes. So if you can see those little bitty things, those are people. It is like this steep, just straight down. If you go down and you can't get back up, it's $3,000 for them to rescue you. So we decided to go to a winery instead. But it was lots of fun. And that's Leland, a little fish town. You can buy smoked fish and all kinds of fish and things like that. More dunes. We did some hiking. Ann DeGenova, Ann and Tim Marty came to visit us there in Leland. They live in the area. It was pretty rough. You can see how rough the water is. That lake was really had to pay attention. And up in the corner, Stan Winkler's brother and came to visit us, Ruth and Rich, and we went out to dinner with them. So that was neat too. And I guess Scott missed us again. He came to Holland, Scott and Ann, and Holland, all of these towns, if you need a family vacation, just pick one. They're all awesome. You just can't go wrong. So we had a lot of fun in Holland. And here we are. See, the Nevo app that we were telling you about, over in the corner, all of those little flags are boats, and you can click on it and see who's there. And we were all stuck in Hammond, Indiana, because the Corps of Engineers wouldn't let us through the locks until a certain date, I forget what. October 1st. And then there was so much barge traffic, they decided there was 300 of us. So they said, how many a day could go through? 18 or something?
14 minutes, 15 boats
Okay.
per day.
So anyway, so the organization picked leaders, or anyway, Mike was the leader of our flotilla 3, and we got to go through the third day and open. We were two, flotilla 2, I forget. Anyway, so we had to organize opening all these bridges and getting all these folks through 3 locks safely. But it was neat. So we were stuck here for a while. Decided to go home, and we spent some time in St. John. I did get to see Gene Fisher again when I was home. And then we flew out to St. Bates. In Chicago, we got to take the boat through downtown Chicago. That's, the front end of the boat, going past the Trump's Tower. It was so cool. If you've ever done the architectural tour in Chicago, we got to do it on our own boat, so that was neat. And of course, we went into Chicago about 3 times and did all the things you do there. This is Mike leading Flotilla 2. It was wild. We had to have that bridge raised, and there we are, lined up in the locks. And people are so anal. He was like, "Okay, we'll all in a row." "No, they're in my spot." It's like, "Oh, please." But anyway, we got through it. That was my last lock, 197. Never again. And coming down the Mississippi, when you pass a barge, you have to call them on the radio, and they tell you which side to go on, the 1 or the 2. You can explain that to them.
Well, that goes back to the old days when boats on the river only had steam power, and they only had whistles. They didn't have radio, so they always would have a whistle, and you could blow a whistle once or twice, and that would tell the other captain what side to go on. So when you called the barges going down the river, they would say, "Yeah, hi, come on, I'll see you on the 1 or see you on the 2, which means that would tell you which side they wanted you to pass them on.
Yeah, when we were down closer to Mobile, Mike said, "I don't hear real well. What did he say?" And he said, "Yeah, well, whistle." I have no idea what he said. Grafton, if y'all haven't been up the river road to Grafton, it's so much fun. Lots of fun. Go to Grafton. And there we are finishing. So you get rid of your white flag and you get your gold flag. We sold the boat before we even got home. This is them hauling the boat out of the water. We had to have some bottom work done and we painted the bottom, and the new owners took over, and Nora Jo was home with us, so we got one last boat ride. And that was our loop. So, any questions? Yes.
What month did you leave? What month did you get back?
We left in October and we got back in October. You want to follow the river system in the fall, and you don't want to be in Florida until hurricane season's over, which is sometime in November. And then you want to come up the east side in the spring and be in Canada in the summer. So you just follow the weather.
Question?
Yes.
Well, I probably got like 10. Anyways, this is my husband's dream to do this. So
You gotta do it.
you stated that you guys had a boat at Green Turtle Bay and it was a
Yes.
sailboat. Were you avid sailboaters before then?
Are you kidding? We took 4 days of lessons. And we spent, sailboat is really slow. And so we never made it. We never made it down to Paris, Tennessee. We couldn't get that far in a weekend.
So before you bought your sailboat, were then you avid boaters anyways? Like, did you have John boats? ski
Just
boats?
water ski boats.
Water ski boats?
Yeah.
And were you familiar with the Mississippi when
We
you
had
took off?
like ski boats, 16s, 18-foot ski boats.
Yeah, dude,
That's
I've been
the
on
only
the
thing.
river in a 14-foot
Yeah.
John boat with the hole in the bottom.
Yeah.
You ain't telling me nothing. So, yeah.
It doesn't, it's not hard. It takes you about, well, it took me, I jumped on the boat and 3 days later I had to bring it 1,700 pounds home, so.
Right, but I mean, you knew how to drive a boat. You were familiar
Yeah.
with all that.
Yeah, I kind of knew how to.
And then were you okay with this idea of taking this trip? Or were you, like, are you?
Would you rather work or go on this trip?
Okay, there you go, okay. But you did spend, I know you said you went all the way down to Key West and you can cut across the northern part of Florida.
Save a little time.
Right, but there was a lot of time, you were gone for the period of time you were gone because you stayed at a lot of different places, correct?
We would spend often, the most was probably a month in Key West, but usually 3-4 days in the
Okay, and
in the
did
city.
you have to pack, like, you obviously just stopped, went to the grocery store, cooked on the
Yes,
road, and
there's a
stuff like
place
that?
to get provisions.
Okay.
This book, actually, this is what you need to borrow here, right
If
here.
you're thinking about doing it, get this book.
This book, it's called The Looper's Companion Guide, and it shows you how most people do it, shows you the route they take, it's got, numbers,
It shows you day by day where you.
day by day, yeah, where you're up,
Your
yeah.
options is.
Right, to get
Until
gas.
I got that boat, I didn't know. Until I got that book, I didn't know whether for sure I could do this. But then I read this book, and I thought, I can do this because in this book it gives you, you're only taking 20 and 30 mile trips. You're not taking long trips. I mean, the longest trip we took was sometimes on the river. We may have went 100 miles a couple of days, but most of the time your days are 40 and 50 miles, and you get up, you do the trip, you get to a marina, and you get to marina late in the afternoon, and you got on the afternoon, the rest of the afternoon, evening, and play around and go out to eat in restaurants and everything else.
And you said you started in Alton, Illinois. Is there any reason you didn't just meet up with the people just out here in St. John or wherever, or like Kentucky Lake where you had your boat?
Well, we thought we would have more time we brought it back to Alton thinking we'd have more time to spend on it and get ready, things like that before we left. But it wasn't really true. So.
Awesome. And I guess you're both avid swimmers?
Yes, we were both avid swimmers, yes.
Perfect. I'll probably have to wear my jacket the whole time.
Yeah, we didn't swim.
We didn't swim at all on this trip.
No, thank goodness.
Mike,
Yeah.
didn't you tangle some rope around the prop?
Yeah, Mike was known very quickly as the Guyver, and he had to untangle props and do a lot of things to help people along the way. Yeah, but the bad news was they all asked me what he drank because he'd do this work for him and wouldn't take it. I said, well, he drinks some Michelob Ultra, which he does not. So very quickly, we would get these gallons of chocolate milk put on the boat. So I I didn't get any beer. Yeah. Anybody have any questions or comments?
How was it crossing Lake Michigan?
Oh, man. How was the water on Lake Michigan?
Lake Michigan, we were coming down Lake Michigan towards the fall. And Lake Michigan gets really bad the farther in the winter you get. I mean, the waves get you get strong winds and high seas. Lake Michigan, we actually spent more time planning our days in Lake Michigan than we did in the ocean. It was easier. The Lake Michigan, there was more days where you couldn't go because of the seas. They were rougher. But with the apps and this stuff you got nowadays, you can pretty much know when it's going to be bad. And when it's bad, you don't go anyplace. I mean, you don't go out on Lake Michigan. We were in Lake Michigan and went to a place and stayed there. And we got there just before the wind started blowing and the waves got up to 13 foot high. I mean, if we would have been out in that, we wouldn't be here. I mean, we'd be down at the bottom of Lake Michigan. So,
How long did it,
Yes.
how long did it take to cross Lake Michigan?
we never crossed Lake Michigan.
Yeah, some people
You just
do.
came down.
Some people do, but we never did. We stayed right on the Michigan side. We stayed right down the coast. And one thing good about the coast of Michigan on that side is about every 10 miles, there's an inlet with a little town that has like a little
Safe harbor.
harbor in there. And it's really safe once you get in there. So all you gotta do is kind of sneak past that 10, 15 miles and get to the next town and then wait out the weather. Lake Michigan was more of a challenge than the ocean was.
I know you said that you know stayed along the coast. Was that pretty much true to form around Florida and up the coast and everything? Like, did you always see land, or were you far enough out to where you would be worried
The
about
only
it?
time we were in the ocean really is when we made the crossing from Carabel to Steinhatchee. We made a 78-mile crossing. We were 35 miles offshore. That is the only time we really were far enough that we couldn't see land. Everything else is in the intercoastal waterway. It's actually not in the ocean, it's in the intercoastal. In the intercoastal, which is kind of sheltered. So then once we got up to New Jersey, there was a place where you had to go outside because the New Jersey intercoastal waterway is really shallow and they have a hard time accommodating larger boats. So you kind of sneak out and go in New Jersey. But that was nothing compared to Lake Michigan.
Crossing to Key West.
Okay, and then we did cross, you don't have to do it, but we did go to Key West. And we did do it by going and making a crossing from the tip of Florida down to Key West. That was another 70-mile crossing. And it was just like, but it was done in really calm weather. It was really a nice crossing. It was really easy.
And we were following, trust me. How many gallons of fuel did it take? $15,000 worth, right?
It took, yeah. I never really kept track of how many gallons. It was just like, I think it was like $15,000 to $16,000 and about $3 to $5 a gallon. So it was a hard thing to put into a fuel station.
Anybody else?
So you filled up 15 times? You filled up 15 times?
Probably more than that. I don't know.
I was just saying, he said.
It was about $1,000
Yeah.
So,
when you fill up. But sometimes we just top off because it's like, for instance,
I tried not to let go below a half tank because
yeah.
going below a half tank, you
Oh.
start picking up stuff off the bottom of the
Yeah.
tank and stuff. And also, when you pull in, you're almost empty. It's it's $1,500 to fill up on $700. So that's
Judy?
Would you do it again, and if so, would you do anything different?
Would we do it again, and would we do anything different? I'd have a better mattress. But yeah, I would definitely do it again. Yeah. And you know, I would spend a little less time in the Keys and a little more time other places. And we wanted to cross to the Bahamas, which we weren't able to do because the twins were coming, and I did not want to be over there and not be able to get back in case they needed us.
So you said the bay was the worst, it was awful.
What? Oh, Delaware Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So usually like the worst things are the most memorable. So what was it?
It was just, I felt like we were a washing
Oh,
machine,
okay.
you know? And there was some safe places to go, little inlets, but you need, to anchor our boat, you need to have like 15 foot of water or less, and it was like 40 foot. It's like, we can't anchor it. So we had to
Was it
get
rough because of the weather or rough because of the other boats?
It was rough because of the winds, yeah. There was hardly any other boats out there. There, you know, as beautiful as the Chesapeake is, the Delaware has nothing. No towns or,
Delaware
it's,
is more industrial.
it's industrial, yeah. It was just yucky. Don't go there.
Did you drive the boat? Could you
sorry?
drive the boat?
Did I drive the boat?
Yeah, could you? Did you know how to drive the boat?
Sure, I would drive the boat. 'Cause
Well, I mean,
and
it's
sometimes he had
more-
to pee.
Well, but I mean, like, because when you dock, he's
Right.
driving
No,
the
he
boat,
was
so you
usually-
have to tie it up, or
He was
either you have
docking.
to,
Mike
okay.
would dock and then I would do the tie.
Tie up thing, okay, so when you drove, it would probably be like me, like out in where you're not gonna run into anything,
Right.
not like whipping it up to the dock, okay.
And I was just fine with that.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Could do some fishing?
Well, there were fishing poles on the boat when we bought it, and I said, "Oh, we can fish." And he said, "Are you going to clean the fish?" And I said, "No," and so we didn't take them. So no, but if you're a fisherman, it would have been a great thing. A lot of people did a lot of fishing. Yeah.
I don't like fish, so.
Yeah. Oh, that was the thing. You know, he knows every pot of clam chowder all the way around.
You mentioned your passport getting back in the country. What about when you went into Canada?
When we went in, we had to stop at a immigration dock, and they can board your boat if they want to, but they just asked us a bunch of questions, and I had to have a list of things we had on. You couldn't have any fresh fruit or any plants, couldn't bring anything into the country that was going to contaminate. And they wanted to know how much alcohol you had, things like that. Anyway, not enough, I said.
More
All right.
questions?
Well, thank you guys for coming. I
So now who can live a whole year on a boat? Thank you all for coming again. Thank you to our sponsor, the Retired Auto Service in St. John.